Any currency that you use in the world today, any country you are in, you're probably using a paperback currency, which means there's no natural tangible asset related to your currency that your currency can equate to. Most currencies, or rather all currencies in the world today, run on trust. The trust that the currency will still be valuable in the future. That's the trust that you put into the currency. That's why banks are called trusts. This whole banking system is a wordplay. It's based on something called as the Maritime Admiralty Law. We'll get into that later. It's a huge topic. But understand that the word bank itself means a shore of a sea, a shore of a river, a shore of a creek, where the ships go to bank, where the ships go to dock. That's the bank, right? The bank of a river, a bank of a lake, a bank of an ocean. And the ship berths there. So a bank, the word bank itself comes from seafarers or maritime admiralty. I have been a seafarer. My first career was to being a marine officer. So I studied marine navigation, and I've also done my internship on the ship for almost the whole time of the required 2 years. And I know a lot of maritime terms and vocabulary, and which I can relate to in everyday life. That being said, banks is a seafarer's invention. And back in the day, coins, notes, currencies were equated to gold, silver, and other useful things in nature, or rather than useful, precious, limited, rare things in nature that you could equate the money to. But then starting 1920 or 1911, since the inception of the Federal Reserve in the US, the backing up of these currencies with gold was reduced or taken out slowly from the circulation. And after 1971, after Reagan's administration, all of the currency was paper backed or trust backed, and it wasn't resource backed. It went to the oil barrel for a while, and it went on many other things, but then it's still US dollar paperback currency that the whole world is running on. Every other country equates the value of their currency in comparison to the value of the dollar. How do you equate? If you're a traveler, if you watch any traveling channels, you would know that the way a currency is equated, if it's high or low, is in comparison with US dollar. How much would you get in exchange for US dollar? Even on the global market. So every currency derives its value from the US dollar today. And since the US dollar itself is a fiat currency, more or less all currencies in the world are fiat currencies as well. And what does that mean for a regular person? What does that mean for an everyday guy? That means that you might have 100,000, 200,000, 500,000 in your bank today, but tomorrow that 500,000 could mean nothing. It would mean paper. It literally means that. Back in the day, if you had a doubt that your bank wasn't paying you a good enough interest rate for the money that you had, or a good enough exchange rate, or a good enough value for the amount that you had in your bank, for let's say you had $40,000, and your bank was giving you 2 ounces of gold, or equating it that to the 2 ounces of gold, you could take your 40,000, go to another bank which is giving you a better rate, which is giving you, let's say, 2.5 ounces for 40,000, or 3 ounces for 40,000. That's how you equated your money to. But today, can you equate your money to anything? Can you take your 40,000 and go to another bank and say, give me a better rate on this 40,000? No, because 40,000 is 40,000 for any bank now. It's because that 40,000 is not equated to anything. It equates loosely. It equates to the hours of time you put into the system, and how much wheel do you churn? How much system wheel do you churn? How much do you make that machinery work? If you've noticed, in the last 100 years or so, civilization has changed so much, where we went from like riding bullock carts, or riding horse cart, camel carts, to sitting in cars. Our ancestors, for at least 2,000-3,000 years, were pretty much living the same lifestyle. They were learning from the elders and then copying it, and that's what made them successful. But we cannot do that, right? We cannot just blindly copy what our elders did and hope that it will make us successful in today's world, because the world has changed drastically. The same rules that apply to our previous generations, rules about economy, politics, social structures, do not apply to us, or they apply to us in a much magnified way, or in a different way, especially the financial statistics. Back in the day, you could be a school teacher and you could still end up owning a house. Your spouse didn't need to work, your kids ate well, you could afford a car, and you could still have a happy life with a 5-day work week. But today it's not possible. You need 2 jobs to sustain maybe even a lower lifestyle than what the previous 2 generations had. And I think this will continue to compound until the fiat dollar, or the fiat currency, collapses globally. And once it collapses globally, that's when survival of the fittest would be the deciding factor as to who survives and who doesn't. Can you imagine a life without electricity today? Can you imagine a life without Wi-Fi, even without a phone? Try spending a day without your phone and see how you feel, and then try spending a day without electricity. Maybe go camping somewhere and see how that feels. And if that happens in the future, if the fiat currency collapses, which it most certainly will, because how long can you keep this paperback currency going, right? At some point, inflation will break out, deflation would happen. Somewhere there would be some printing scam, because all it is printed paper at this point. So when the dollar collapses, when the West kind of loses its supremacy over the world, and when the financial structures of the West collapse, which are based on the fiat currency now, and by West I mean, the world is like hard to explain. I'm not sure. The world, the governance of the world, the economics of the world is run through a pyramid scheme, where the West is at the top of the pyramid, and then everybody else is under that pyramid when it comes to how the financial structure of the world is. Even the social structure, for example, like the East and the so-called second world and the third world looks at the first world and then copies the first world, then to reach where the first world is. Most political ideas, most financial ideas, economic ideas, groundbreaking events, even when it comes to something as terrorism, it's caused in the first world, and then the ripple effects of it are felt in the second and the third world, which are harsh enough, but then they are felt in the second and the third world, and they copy, like, the attention of the second and the third world is on the first world, and the second and the third world is very ignorant of what's happening in the first world. People do not know. People in the first world are pretty much ignorant of what's happening in the first world also. So eventually, this whole charade of this Ponzi scheme, for lack of a better word, for this fiat pyramid, when it goes down, it's going to take when the top collapses, it will take the entire structure down. And at that point, you know what's going to be the most important skill set that you would have to survive? It's going to be minimalism. To survive with the smallest amount of things for the longest amount of time. This probably won't be a survival as in a jungle survival, which our forefathers had to, like, endure. But this survival is more or less going to be like a social survival, where people won't be thirsty for each other's blood, but your endurance will be, your social communication skills will be at test, at par. Your sharing skills will be at test. Your community skills will be at test. I don't think people will go back to being savages, because we are at the point of the evolution where, yes, there are a lot of ignorant people, but there are a lot of wise people as well who know what's going on. And I'm sure there will be an alternate way out. But if you are someone who's not used to minimalism, if you are someone who is engulfed with things, materialism, and who identifies with brands and just in general things around them, if you identify with your car, if you identify with the place you live, your country of origin, the language you speak, all these things that hold your ego or make up your ego in today's world, are the things that will be destructive for your survival when that time comes. I don't know when that time will come. There's a general theory that the world runs on a 120-year bankruptcy cycle. And if you think that the last bankruptcy was the Great Depression, which was 1929, then 120 years is not very far. Could be 20 to 30 years from now, could be the next 15 years. And we are seeing signs of it already. We are seeing signs of global unrest, just unnecessary nonsense, just illogical nonsense. Right from the basics of which bathrooms to use, which prisons to be sent to, and so on. You know what I'm talking about. So even the basics of the most basic logic has been questioned or is at stake right now. And there are people on both sides working hard to maintain their perspective and keep the truth alive. But if the powers to be decide, because after all, you know who runs it, right? If the powers to be decide, and I'm not talking about the politicians, the presidents, the media people, the business tycoons like Musk. I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the real powers that you and me don't know. The real directors of the movie that we are watching. When they find out, or once they decide to make this switch, it's going to happen in no time. So be ready for it. Learn to study history a bit and see how people lived. Go back in time and try to survive on the littlest things that you have. Maybe only own 5 pair of clothes, only have 2 pair of shoes. It will save you money immensely in today's world, and it will also save you for the future. Make sure you convert your money into something tangible, like gold or even oil, food, grains, survival shelter, like an outhouse, maybe an off-grid cabin where you could survive on without the need of the systems. Make an alternate plan. Try to be a minimalist. Survive on what you have and try to give up what our forefathers did not have. Try to give up what your grandpa did not have. Try to give up what your grandma did not have. Because believe me or not, there will come a time where we are going to need to live like that. There is going to come a time where that will be a need of time. You won't have the luxury to choose minimalism. Today, minimalism is looked as a bourgeoisie Ponzi thing to get attention. It's looked at as a just like a new fad, a new style, something in fashion. But mark my words, it's going to be a necessity in the future. Maybe not for you, but for your kids, maybe your grandkids if you're lucky. But you're going to need the skill set. You're going to need the skill set of minimalism. So prepare for it. And minimalism is not a new fancy new ideas where you're going to need to take up a course to do. For God's sake, don't take up any courses. Yes, there are some good courses on YouTube and online, but most of them are clickbaits and just training scams, man. Everything that you need, you can find it for free on the internet now. All you need to know is what to search for, what to look for. Train yourself. Become a minimalist. Try being a minimalist at least 1 or 2 days a week, and then take it from there. Give away everything you do not need. Try it out. It's going to be needed. I hope you get the point. If you want to know more, read my book. It's in the description below. You can find it on Amazon, most probably in the country you live in. It will really help me out, and it will really help you out as well to see through the bullshit. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.